The air quality in Delhi improved to the very poor category today morning as the AQI index dropped to 381 after touching nearly 500 in the severe plus category. Now, that is earlier this week. But the air quality issue this time has thrown up more questions than answers. Now, the greatest confusion was that some credible private agencies often show AQI readings of more than 1,000, 1,500, while the official figure never goes beyond 500. In fact, using the same data from the authorities. This is because India's guidelines for converting mass concentration of pollutants to the AQI figures are based on its own breakpoint, which are far less as far as, stringent that is, than the WHO prescribed guidelines. Now, the breakpoint is the threshold level from where the AQI readings go from one category to another. Our AQI is set based on our epidemiological data and susceptibility studies that keep the Indian government, Indian environment in mind, beg your pardon. This would be fine except for the discomfort of setting a cap at 500 AQI, regardless of how many times the concentrations exceed that level, which you tend to look at when you're looking at it on an everyday basis in terms of the data. Now, Delhi Environment Minister Gopal Rai announced on Wednesday that government offices in Delhi will switch to work from home. That would be, of course, for 50% of the employees as a measure to curb the pollution crisis. But it's also tell you that Graded Response Action Plan Phase 4 restrictions have already been implemented in the city. And that continues to remain, of course. Kritika Tiwari, my colleague who has been reporting on this top development for us, joins me live once again this morning. I'm given to understand, Kritika, on a lighter note, while I say good morning to you, Akshardham has become the new destination for you, considering the fact that, if there's anybody better who's really understood this region and how that AQI has really panned out. Let's just say for the past 1 week, several factors contributing to what we're looking at. In fact, you've also borne the brunt of it with having health issues as well. That goes on to show the toxicity that is prevalent in the air. One aspect of this, of course, is the fact that the numbers might be looking better, but that doesn't really mean that this is a great story. But at the same point of time, like we were telling our viewers, with the fact that how the AQI is also calculated, many would also assume that, there are certain agencies which would report, especially international forums, saying that it's 1,000 plus, while we go on to report it nothing beyond 500 yet. But at the same point of time, one thing that's common in the way that data is being presented is you're still living in a gas chamber irrespective.
Right, Nivedna. In fact, for India, definitely the norms are set a little less stringent than the WHO norms. And the reason for that the government gives is that the baseline pollution itself is quite high. So while the WHO level would be at 30 AQI, ours would start from 50. So that is one of the key difference. And government officials have also held that the health risks that occur post the levels reaching 500 sort of plateau, which is also why the readings max out at 500 and we do not see levels of say 576 or 24 and so on. That is one of the key difference that officials have held. Definitely a lot of issues have been raised up with international forums releasing different numbers and our AQI following a different pattern. But this is what the Environment Ministry recently has also held, how Sameer app, which is the app released by the Environment Ministry as well, should be the AQI levels that we should be following or referring to while deciding on what type of outdoor activities we have to plan. And definitely, as you've said, with the Supreme Court coming in hard on the Delhi government as well as on the state governments, we have seen how specifically now the Delhi government has announced that 50% of all of its departments as well as MCD officials will be working at a 50% capacity and the rest will be working from home. Now these measures will continue even though today the AQI is being recorded around 379 as an average for the national capital. But these measures will stay on till the Supreme Court releases a further order, because remember, in the last hearing as well, it was said that even if there is a slight improvement in the numbers, GRAP stage 4 cannot be taken back unless and until the Supreme Court gives it a nod. Now, what we're also seeing is that vehicular pollution is also something that the state government wants to target by asking officials to stay back, which is also why they've also requested private organizations to also follow suit, also issue orders of 50% in office capacity and the rest 50% working from home, as well as suggesting staggered office timings, so any sort of congestion can be held back. Now, what we saw yesterday specifically was how the fog conditions were much better. There was only a shallow fog condition. Despite that, we could see a lot of haze still quite visible near the surface, but the skies had opened up. We could finally see blue sky for the very first time in all these weeks that we've been reporting. So that is a good sign that the weather was clearing up yesterday. It goes on to show how with the wind speed, definitely that is one of the only things that we can expect some relief from, that only when the wind speed picks up, there will be more dissipation of pollutants and some respite to the Delhi residents. Otherwise, if the wind remains calm as is predicted for the next few days as well, and fog conditions also become more dense, it would be back to looking at the same figures we were just earlier in this week, with with around 20 stations touching severe plus, more stations maxing out. So these are still possibilities, which is also why the Supreme Court guidelines become very important, that just by looking at the numbers, we don't start adjusting our enforcements of the laws, especially pertaining to anything that pertains to reducing congestion as well as limiting construction and demolition activities, because these still remain one of the highest contributors. What also we unfortunately continue to see is that over 1,000 cases of stubble burning were recorded even yesterday. Both Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh have crossed their 5-year extreme levels as well, so that continues to be a concern.